Welcome back to another episode of Gamebook Collector. This is the second episode in the series. We're doing the top 10 Fighting Fantasy Gamebook artwork covers from Gamebooks number 11 to 20. The previous episode we done Gamebooks number 1 to 10 and we ranked the top 3 Gamebook covers. It'll be the same in this episode. So we're going to have a look at these Gamebooks here. As I said, it's Gamebooks number 11 to 20. I'm going to look at the artwork on the front covers and I'll determine which is my favourite. So, we're starting off this Gamebook here. It's Gamebook number 11. It's a Talisman of Death. It's a cracking cover. As you can see on it, there's a Grim Reaper type character with a talisman on a horse with a scythe, and he's holding that. Well, it looks like a talisman there or something. So, nice looking artwork on the cover. This is presented by Steve Jackson and Livingstone. Open the Gamebook up. We look and see who the author was. Yeah, it's written by Jamie Thompson and Mark Smith and it's illustrated by Bob Harvey. And this Gamebook was published in 1984. And the cover illustration is by Peter Andrew Jones. So that's the Talisman of Death. Moving on to Gamebook number 12. We'll check out the artwork on this cover. We've got two space soldiers in a console room. In the background it looks like there's a kind of a game going on, or it's like a mine or something, or a kind of war games going on in the background. So we've got two military soldiers, space soldiers there. Get inside the book. We'll check it out and see who the author was. This one was written by Andrew Chapman and it's illustrated by Jeffrey Senior. And what was the year of publication? This one was first published in 1985. And the cover artwork was by Christos Achilleos. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Christos Achilleos. He's done the artwork cover for Space Assassin. Right, moving on. So we're moving on to Gamebook number 13. It's Ian Livingstone's Freeway Fighter. As you can see in the cover here, there's a large red car, a futuristic type motor. It's not like Mad Max type scenario. These freeway fighters or rebel fighters on the motorway, or not a motorway but a desert type background. I said it's very not uncanny like Mad Max. This cover stands out quite a bit. It's not your kind of norm, it's a bit different. So as you can see, this Gamebook here, it looks in pristine condition. Had a mark on it. The spine isn't even broken, not a crease in the spine. As you can see there. So I'm just going to open it up and see the details inside. Okay, it's Ian Livingstone's the author of this Gamebook and it's illustrated by Kevin Bulmer. As you can look at a wee nosy at the adventure sheet. Just make sure it's not been written on, yeah, not a mark on it. And cover illustration is by Jim Burns. Jim Burns is the illustrator of this Gamebook number 13, Freeway Fighter. Okay, moving on to Gamebook number 14. It's a cracker. I always loved this cover. It's Ian Livingstone's Temple of Terror, Gamebook number 14, and you can see a serpent or snake type creature underneath an archway with an axe and a shield. Yep, and the desert or sand below him. Cracking cover. Just going to open this up and if you look at the publication date of this one's 1985. Ian Livingstone's Temple of Terror. To Christos Achilleos and McCaig for making Fighting Fantasy a reality. Christos Achilleos and Ian McCaig's the well-known artists in Fighting Fantasy. I think the previous book, was it Freeway Fighter? No, wasn't it? It was a Space Assassin. It was done by, yep, Christos Achilleos or Chris Achilleos. Right, moving around the back of the cover illustration again, it's by Christos Achilleos or Chelios. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. So I'm saying Achilleos, but maybe Achilleos. So that's Temple of Terror. That's a cracking looking cover. Gamebook 14. Number 15 we have The Rings of Kether. We've got a very large
looking gentleman with his elbows on a type of console. In the background is space, a very red looking planet with very red looking planets beyond in the distance, and a star shining. It looks pretty mean. Gamebook 15, this is well worn. This one and Island of the Lizard King is one of my first Fighting Fantasy Gamebooks that I ever purchased. I'm not sure if it is this one or Island of the Lizard King. Is one of the two of them. But as you can see, it's well worn. So we're going to open it up and have a wee check and see what information gives us. First published in 1985. It's written by Andrew Chapman and illustrated by Nick Spender. And the cover illustration is by Terry Oakes. Terry Oakes is the artist for this one, The Rings of Kether. Right, Gamebook number 16 in the series, we have Seas of Blood. Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone present Seas of Blood. I've always liked the cover of this one. A type of Hydra type creature attacking a ship. The Seas of Blood, obviously. Open it up, have a wee look. See what details we have here. Andrew Chapman, again, author and illustrated by Bob Harvey. This one was published in 1985 again. As you've probably seen a minute ago here, the cover illustration is by Rodney Matthews. Rodney Matthews is illustrator of Seas of Blood. Okay, that went out the road, and we have none other than a very, very difficult game book. It's a cracking game book. It's different from the norm. It's comic book driven. It's Steve Jackson's Appointment with Fear, and you've got this Fear organisation character in front. Obviously, he's not Doctor Doom, but it's very like Doctor Octopus type face with the glasses on. So he's obviously zapping in on a circuit board there. Gamebook 17, very difficult game book. Well, I found it very difficult. As you've already seen, the other author is Steve Jackson, and it's illustrated by Declan Considine. Okay, hope I pronounced that correctly. I'll just check the publication date in this one. Is it 1985 or 1986? Wait a second. Sorry. This page here. Here we go. Again, 1985 for this one. Dedicated to BJ, a superhero in his own way. Appointment with Fear, illustrated by, front of our illustration is by Brian Boland, and it's, as I said there, it's a lot different from our Fighting Fantasy Gamebook covers. Comic book style cover, fantastic. Appointment with Fear, number 17. Right, moving on to Gamebook 18. It is Steve Jackson, Ian Livingstone presents once again, and it's Rebel Planet. I've always loved this cover. I don't know what it is, it's just the attraction of it. You've got a giant lizard serpent with a huge sword. So, yeah, Rebel Planet, you've got lava in the foreground, in the background you've got the stars, space dust, etc. Yeah, cracking looking cover. Will you look inside this one? Written by Robin Waterfield and illustrated by Gary Mays. Gary Mays is the illustrator, and the front cover is done by Alan Craddock. Alan Craddock is the artist for the front cover of this one. Sorry, what year was this published? 85 again or 86? 85 again. There's a lot of books in 85 here for Julian for fun. Okay, game book number 18, Rebel Planet. Moving on once again to game book number 19 is Demons of the Deep, another one. Yeah, I like this one also. Based in Ocean. On the front is a bone type creature with a large axe and spears, etc. A sword. And this one was published in 1986, so it's the first of the 1986 books. Yep, Steve Jackson's wrote this one. Mr. Jackson himself has wrote this game book, and it's illustrated by Bob Harvey. And you've probably seen a minute ago there, it's a cover illustration by Les Edwards. That's Demons of the Deep, number 19. So moving on to game book number 20, we have Sword of the Samurai. It's one I haven't played. So in the foreground here you have a Japanese a samurai type warrior here. It looks kind of maybe futuristic. Japanese writing there, and looks like a volcano type in the background. The real of the book, Shogun's control, slipping bandits from the land of freely. Yep. So it's a kind of Japanese warrior type game book. It's pretty thick. We'll check this one out. This would be 1986. Yep, 1986 first published, and the author for this one is Mark Smith and Jamie Thompson, and it's illustrated by Alan Langford, as you can see there, and the cover illustration is by Peter Andrew Jones. So Peter Andrew Jones is the illustrator for this artwork for the front cover. So there you have it, the next batch of game books from game book number 11 to number 20. So I'm going to choose my top 3. So in third place for the next section of these game books, game books 11 to 20, in third place I'm going to give it to, well, it's not as clear cut as the first 10 books. This second section of books are pretty, well, for me, a wee bit harder to decipher which one to pick. So it's between two books here. It's between the Talisman of Death and Rebel Planet, and both cracking covers. I'm going to give third place to Rebel Planet, and I may be a bit biased here because it's one of my favourite space adventure game books. Yep, Rebel Planet, third place, but large serpent lizard in the background wielding his sword. It's just very inviting, very attractive cover. You've got the star systems in the background and lava. This one was illustrated by Alan Craddock. Game book number 18, third place, is Rebel Planet. In second place is none other than Steve Jackson's Appointment with Fear. Appointment with Fear, second place. This one, if it's sitting in a shelf in a shop, it's very inviting. It's a lot more cartoonish than or comic book like than other covers. It's just something about this game book cover that if it's sitting in a shelf you just want to buy it. With the Titanium Cyborg on the cover, Brian Boland, game book number 17 is in second place. And the winner it's very, very close between that and Appointment with Fear, but I do love that work, this cover. It just stands out. Yeah, fantastic cover. Game book number 14 is none other than the Temple of Terror. Temple of Terror, for me, is number one spot in this section of game books as my favourite cover. You've got the serpent in the background, or snake, with the axe and shield underneath the archway, desert below him, possibly is this the entrance to the temple, etc. Not sure. This one's done by Christos Achilleos. As I said before, we pronounced that right, or Chris Achilleos. Cracking cover. Always liked this one. Very inviting. Again, Appointment with Fear. It's very close. There's nothing in it. Absolutely nothing. You're splitting hairs here between the two of them, between Appointment of Fear and Temple of Terror for me. This one being, as I said, more comic book, and this one being more in the classic line of Fighting Fantasy book covers. So there you have it. That is the second section of game books from 11 to 20, my top 3. Third position, Rebel Planet. Second position, Appointment of Fear. And top position, Temple of Terror. And the runner-up, as I said there, would have been very close between that Rebel Planet would be Talisman of Death. That was a challenge for the third spot. So there you have it for this section. As I said, this section was a lot more difficult than the first section to decipher, which was the top 3. Obviously, in the first section, the winner being Forest of Doom. And then you had Citadel of Chaos, etc., House of Hell. Yeah, that was that for me. Or sorry, the City of Thieves, House of Hell. So that for me was easily decided. This section was a lot more difficult. So thanks for watching this episode of Gamebook Collector, and I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, it's a bit of fun. It's just my own preference and choice which Gamebooks covers artwork I like the best. And we'll run down, as I said, the next Gamebooks from number 21 to 30.